Welcome to all new First Issues, the weekly First Issues review show. I'm the Archivist, and these are the new releases for the week of April 4th, 2016. Don't forget to stick around after the ad break for a Flashback Firsty that's more of a rant, and a combo manga Firsty and webcomic First-ish. As usual, there's a lot to go through, so let's get right into it. Starting with Marvel, we have Marvel's Black Panther #1, written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, art Bria Stelfreeze, with colors by Laura Martin. You know what you need, Marvel? A timestamp to let us know when these books are set. Even a general yesterday could help with this, because here's where T'Challa's story is thus far. Secret Wars has him using the time gem to go back in time to get Wakanda to be the first to the stars and space and everything. Then we have the fallout of that in Ultimates, with Wakanda being the pinnacle of civilization, with all them space-based heroes working with them, including Alpha Flight. I don't know, it's weird to me too. Why do I bring this up? Because this has Wakanda on the brink of civil war. Not because of anything that T'Challa did, because he's not like the Hudland version, where he was a colder and more forceful king. No, he's still the great king of Wakanda. Was it anything his sister Shuri did? Well, no, because they also liked her before she was killed. But don't worry, apparently he's trying to resurrect her. I don't know. I had to talk to several people after I read this because I didn't know what to think about it myself. In a vacuum, it is a good book. It's greatly written, and it's definitely an epic story that's going to unfold about a civil war in Wakanda. But there's no wrong side here. Why is this a problem? Because no one wants to overthrow a good king. There's a very Western view of Africa presented with clearly there needs to be a political coup just because. Maybe I missed the big why, but frankly it seems to boil down to because words. Now in the politics of today, that's actually a very big thing. I mean, media narratives have led to rioting and worse social relations, but this isn't the media. The reason that works in the Western media as it is right now is because of how good everything is. You cannot have a righteous revolution with a righteous government, because even if Bill Gates tomorrow said, okay, let's overthrow the government, I don't know why I decided to turn him into sounding kind of like a Bush. It's going to take more, like him actually paying out. Because it's not that they have to just hate the government, it's that they have to see other means on how to survive. So seriously, the hate the rebel leader has spread needs to be mystical in nature. Maybe I missed that tidbit when she was having that back and forth, where it's, how did you get such a power over the crowd? It must be magic. No, I just said some words. But that's a very Western view of things. Maybe this is actually a very simple T'Challa versus hate-monger story that's trying to be pretentious. The short answer is that you actually need to read it for yourself. Maybe you'll connect with it, maybe you'll hate it. Me, I wanted to be interested, and like I said, it is actually a good book. It's just, I don't know, it's just, there's something that just doesn't click. Okay, getting away from that rant and on to Marvel's Spider-Woman Alpha #1, written by Robbie Thompson, art by Vanessa Del Rey, with colors by Jordi Belair. I've been waiting for this way back since when it was officially said, oh yeah, we're totally doing this. So Gwen pops over to Earth 616, because that's how flimsy dimensional walls are now in Marvel. So Gwen, the Spider-Woman variety, Cindy, that's Silk's real name, and Jessica Drew, the proud new mother and on and off again actual member of the Spider family of people, are all having a woman's day out, and it's great. But a giant robot attacks. Though they drop it easily, they don't know that it was just a ploy to get Gwen's special dimension traveling watch. So now they're trapped on Earth 65 with no Avengers to help, as an alternate version of Cindy Moon steps to Earth 616. Dun dun dun! Well, I usually don't like spoiling things. This is the Alpha issue, so this is the setup to what I can only say is going to be a great storyline to follow. You've got 2 out of 3 of my favorite Spider-Persons. I'm sorry, Silk, you're still not up there, but you have gotten so much better than you were, I'll give you that. But even she's actually really good in this too, and it's just a great read that got me psyched. While I do love the crisp, sketchy style this has, I think it comes at a bit of a detriment. While I think it does work for the characters most of the time, there's a lot of moments that are awkward quick draws that when you catch, you'll definitely catch it. But with the writing, it could have made them abstract blobs, and I probably still would have said this was worth a buy. So go out and get this right now. It'll give you some of the best characters Marvel has to offer right now, and the setup to a fantastic story coming up. So now let's see if the third book can split the difference on whether or not Marvel had a good week. Marvel's Poe Dameron #1, written by Charles Soule and art by Philip Noto. Poe gets orders from General Organa to find Max von Sandow's character, which leads him and the Black Squadron to a small asteroid moon, where there's a society built around worshipping a space egg. But oh no, the First Order has tracked them down. Yet for the most part, I highly enjoyed this book. The characters are still solidly in their roles from the film, and I really enjoyed Poe from his screen time of The Force Awakens, so why wouldn't I like this? But I realized something big while reading this. Oscar Isaacs made Poe as likable as he actually was. There's nothing against Charles Soule or anything, but Isaacs' natural charisma just doesn't translate onto the page as well as seeing him on screen. And the art is fairly passable. Not the best, but still good enough for what it's doing. Also, there's actually a cute little backup story drawn in this adorable cartoony style about BB-8 getting two people to hook up. Adorably weird. Anyways, my verdict on this is a swift give it a read. Though I think it's definitely only a buy if you are a Star Wars fan, which is probably my whole audience, so give it a buy if you like The Force Awakens. And time for the Marvel Indie imprint, Icons, Empress #1. Written by Mark Miller, pencils by Stuart Immonen, inks by Wade Von Grawbadger, and colors by Yves Svorcina. There's like 3 books rolled into one in this, and it's kind of awesome. The plot is straightforward enough. A mother and her space pirate friend saves her kids from their father, who just so happens to basically be Thanos of this universe. We get epic dogfights and some hefty action to boot because of this. Like I said, this is very much 3 books rolled into one. You have the very basic Star Wars style universe, with even some ships and sets looking like direct homages to particular scenes. But that's not bad at all. It's got a great look, and I feel that I wish the actual Star Wars comic could get. Then we have the writing, which really comes off like Mark Miller had a script idea for the Starjammers, but Marvel proper didn't want it, so he retooled it, and poof, we got this. However, within the art and the writing, you can tell there's a bit of recycling from characters that the current standard has right now. Regardless of that, it's still at least a solid read that you should check out. I know plenty of Mark Miller haters who will plot when they read this. Onward and yonward to the indie scene proper. Images, The Fix #1, written by Nick Spencer, art by Steve Lieber, with Ryan Hill on colors. What a blast! Okay, so short of it all is that this book is about corrupted cops, plain and simple. However, it doesn't just hop into them being strong-armed by Russians or anything like most crooked cop stories go. It starts with a damn good swerve about how being a criminal sucks in the 21st century, with computers basically being the biggest resource and jewelry being complete bull, that there's no honest way to make it as a thief. And then throwing in the great swerve of, so that's why I became a cop. And then, meeting up with some very interesting people that really make this book a total hit. The art is great, especially when paired with the smarmy fun of this writing. I'll admit it got me completely enthralled with just the very first opening line, which for whatever reason instantly made me think of the opening of The Goodfellas. You know, ever since I could remember I wanted to be a gangsta, or whatever the hell it is at the moment. And then you get some great oddball character like a Hollywood producer and a sadistic hitman dad, which ramps it up even more. Even if you aren't really into crime books, you will have a blast when reading this, so go and get it right now. Total buy. Time to milk the cow. Okay, that joke hurt even me. Anyways, here's Top Cow's Think Tank Creative Destruction #1, written by Matt Hawkins and art by Rashan Ekadal. Think Tank has been a series that I've been following for a couple of years now. The Fun with PTSD series got me into it, but I've been reading them all by now, and God, I love this series. And that's what this does. These are the continuing misadventures of Dr. David Lauren, who's one of those jackass geniuses, you know, kind of like House, only with longer hair and more fapping. But oh, believe me when I say that this time he crosses that line to being more than just a bit eccentric, which sort of seems to happen. And really, this is a series you have to read to know if you like it. I'm currently working on a first issue special for all of the free, yes free, issues that Top Cow have up on their website to view, and Think Tank, actually a couple Think Tanks, are going to be among them. I really think that the art and style and writing and everything is worthy of a buy. But if you are unsure about how following a genius who works for the military may be fun, then check out Think Tank #1 for free on the Top Cow website. And then you will want to buy this. Seriously, I think the vast majority will love it. Next up is Oni Press's The Mighty Zodiac #1, written by Jay Torres, art by Corin Howard, with colors by Marta Lau. Kung Fu Panda be damned. When 6 stars fall from the sky, the evil bunnies are unleashed. It's up to the Mighty Zodiac to find the stars and save the day. Surprisingly, there's a lot of anthropomorphic animal artists on the internet, yet you never really see a lot of published comics going that route, so that's a point right there in its favor. And then having a very simple cartoon level look really makes this feel organic, and maybe tap into that side of my inner child that misses such shows that were not so immature but rather just merely all ages. And this leads me to the writing. This is really a great setup, and the best way to do a setup, with each character being a unique archetype, and I'll be honest, the evil Moon Bunny army is legitimately intimidating in a general audience's way. It also works great as a good throwback to those whole Kung Fu group adventures that I always enjoyed. So I would definitely say that this is a good contender for a read, and it is all ages. But I know there are some people that don't like anthropomorphic animals or Kung Fu adventures, so take that for what you will. Alright, Chapter House, you're up. Chapter House Comics All-New Classic Captain Canuck #1, written by Ed Brisson, art by George Freeman, and colors by Laurie E. Smith. Full disclosure, I actually did get a review copy of this yesterday, which technically means last Tuesday, so I did get to read it ahead of time, a whole 24 hours. The plot breaks down that Captain Canuck is running around the time stream trying to get back to the 90s, while an uneasy alliance forms between his enemies to track him down and take him out. First, I will admit that there's a hefty amount of previously on exposition, from why Captain Canuck is traveling through time to just who his enemies are, which range from a tech-powered team run by a megalomaniac to aliens. So it's clearly setting up a, here's what happened in the last series, now we're here now. But even within the here's where we're at right now writing, it never comes off as forced to the point of hindering the plot. In fact, it seems to push the plot forward and give us a great setup all at the same time. This is the quintessential jumping on point to the series. It gets you up to speed while making you interested in what came before without you needing to have read any of the previous Captain Canuck series. However, if you saw my review last week on the reprint of the classic Captain Canuck #1, then you'll know that you wouldn't be disappointed in checking out the past, and you should. You should check it out, not that you should feel disappointed. As for the art, I think it's great. While it never overreaches, every time period we hop into with Captain Canuck feels very organic, with none ever really feeling too different from each other, but at the same time feeling unique in their own right. And then we have the characters. The aliens look alien without being too out there, and every character looks unique enough that they aren't just palette swaps of one another. So my verdict is quite simply, go out and buy this right now, basically for everything I just said. Maybe the additional 24 hours really did allow the comic to sink in more. Time to change rails entirely with American Mythologies, Three Stooges, The Boys Are Back #1, with 3 separate stories and 3 different art teams. Why yes, there are 3 Three Stooges sketches in this, 2 new and 1 a reprint from the 40s. The first is them working at a baseball game, and hijinks ensues. Another is them as hard-boiled detectives, and hijinks ensues. And then a reprint from a Dell comic from 1942 where they're at a carnival and some dip releases a tiger to kill them. Well, technically scare them in comic, but come on, it's a tiger. So hijinks also ensues. Here's the problem when it comes to reviewing straight comedy. Humor is subjective. Like in this, I didn't particularly care for the first or the throwback stories, but I thought the second one was very good. However, all of them are also very Three Stooges in their writing, and that's not a bad thing if you enjoy that. I mean, I remember loving watching each of these old VHS compilations of the Three Stooges, and as a kid I absolutely loved the Three Stooges, but over the years my tastes have steered away from slapstick. But I think it's the legend that is the Three Stooges that makes me say that this is totally worthy of a buy. Hear me out. The book itself is very all ages, though now that there's been some housing changes I just can't hand off the all ages titles to my nephew to see if they work for kids anymore. I can definitely see a kid loving the first arc of this, with adults getting a kick of the noir detective bash that is the second, and both enjoying, via either nostalgia or just the absurdity of it, the third story. I know I'm being very wishy-washy in this, so go buy it for yourself and see if you still have that inner child, or if you've become a sad sack like me. Speaking of tonal shifts, Aftershocks Rough Riders #1, written by Adam Glass, art by Pat O'Leaf, and colors by Gabe El Taib. Right, so Roosevelt's Rough Riders are actually a skilled steampunk group. I repeat, this is a story about Teddy Roosevelt being steampunk Batman, with even a very Frank Miller-esque narration. But wait, it gets even better. He gets all sorts of famous people to join him, like the Galveston Giant, or Jack Johnson if you don't know anything about boxing, and the setup for next issue, Harry Houdini. I honestly I've got nothing to say. The art is great, though they still use the painted Nerf pistol as the standard steampunk firearm. But it's in the writing that this just melts my mind. Alternative history stuff where it's just historical figures hooking up as a team is always a give and take. I personally thought this was highly enjoyable, especially when we see Teddy talking with your standard group of guys with cigars in a parlor alone, just so he can get his orders, as well as this overblown narrative that really is Frank Miller-y in its telling. And then you have that contrasted with the Jack Johnson scenes, which is really great. This has to be seen to be believed, so go out and read it. And let's hit our final company with DC's Justice League, the Darkseid War Special #1, written by Jeff Johns, art by some hefty names, and colors by Alex Sinclair. I really have no clue what's going on in this. Sadly, I've not been following the Darkseid War, so I find I'm fairly lost as to the Green Lantern bits to this book. The main story is that this is the origin of Grail, the daughter of Darkseid and an Amazon assassin apparently, which in itself is a bit suspect, I think. This one-shot, which I was actually hoping would be something of a jumping-on point for the Darkseid War itself, since I'm so far behind now, it's not worth it. While I'm actually very interested in the Grail character now having read this, and how she factors into everything, and curious about Cyborg being in the power battery, it's going to be after the Darkseid Wars, this will be a good read afterwards. Also, is Jessica the Lantern in the DC Rebirth stuff? While I can't recommend this to most people, if you have been following the Darkseid Wars, then you've probably already owned this. And if not, you should. And let's wrap up with DC's Harley Quinn and the Suicide Squad, April Fool's Special #1, written by Rob Williams with anyone not drawing the Darkseid Special on art, pretty much. Hold the phone, this wasn't a humor-filled romp that all the other random Harley specials have been. This was actually kinda dark. I mean, Harley's bummed out until someone sends her a folder for Evil Anonymous, which she takes as a chance to become a psychologist again, for Man-Bat no less, which obviously doesn't end well. But then we actually do get a bit of cartoony humor when she's a bit concussed, with what DC really needs to make into a webcomic. Harley Quinn sitting down and having therapy time with other villains. Even if you made it solely available on DC All Access, that would be a hell of a thing that could draw in a ton of readers. And revenue alone would easily pay for the creative team. Anyways, what this actually is, we find out towards the end, is a setup for the new Suicide Squad book for DC Rebirth, including a reintroduction to the Amanda Waller we all know and love to hate. You know, that thick black woman that makes us all. Anyways, verdict is simple here. Go out and buy this right now. Be it for the look into Harley Quinn's subconscious, or the funny that happens when she's knocked out, or even just the fact that this is actually a sneak peek at the Rebirth Suicide Squad. It is definitely a must-own one-shot. And that's all for First Issues. I know this episode was a bit more long-winded than usual, but I had a lot to say this week. And stick around after the ad break where I go into a rant about Black Knight #1, or more the whole miniseries really. And then do a manga and webcomic firsty on One Punch Man. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we've got a fun little look at a comic that I'm still hearing people talk about in a positive light, as though they never read it. Yes, I did look back at this on my Facebook page, but now it's time for me to have my rant about it. Originally released November 18th, 2015, this is Marvel's Black Knight #1, written by Frank Thierry, art by Luca Pizzari, and colors by Antonio Fabella. Short, simple plot is that Dane Whitman is on a mythical island fighting to make his own kingdom. That is until the end of this issue when the Uncanny Avengers show up. Okay, here's my rant. The first issue was great with that strange fantasy angle it was going with, which they could have used for this 5-issue miniseries all by itself. Hell, they could have made it an ongoing with that premise and really fleshed out more of the start of the series with him actually needing to gain the followers that he had, rather than basically already having a giant army, yet no kingdom of his own yet. Not sure how that worked out. With solid artwork that really makes the weird world seem weird and real, while keeping the humans and humanoids on model, it's really top form. But no! Instead, we immediately have the damn Avengers showing up. Why? I'm not actually sure why, because this whole issue is setting up how there's no way that Dane would be able to return. They wanted to show a darker Dane Whitman, having started to lose himself to the Ebony Blade and all, but that's where the whole show don't tell comes into play, because we get hints about that in this issue, but the rest of the series is the Uncanny Avengers telling us all about it, plus flashbacks to it which could have worked to show us why he entered the weird world in the first place without needing the Avengers properly in the present. What this could have been is taking issues 3 through 5 and making it an arc of the Uncanny Avengers series proper, especially since we spend so much time with them in this comic. It's called Black Knight. You stick with the Black Knight. If you can't tell from this rant, this is an ignorable buy with a super squandered potential. They had the chance to make a fantasy series, something they don't have right now, with practically every book being space-based in some way. But instead they went, meh, we can't fit this storyline in our current schedule, so let's just throw this into its own miniseries, slap Black Knight's name on it. This issue by itself would have been a total buy if it led into a series that wasn't so stupidly against what was set up here. Potential like that is what pisses me off in comics more than bad art or terrible writing, because you show that the writing is there, and it's not stupid, it's fine, it's good, and then they just cut the legs out from under it. Now, I'm going to move on, before I get even more hate mail from that rant, to the manga and webcomics FIRSTY/First-ish on, well, you know. I already know how this is going to go. But you just started these sections. When the hell's with this cheap attempt to lower your workload? To which I say, shut up. I'm having a cluttered week. But yes, this is going to be a special look at both the original One Punch Man webcomic and the first chapter of the manga by One. So, One wrote and drew the One Punch Man webcomic. Pretty simple, right? Oh, fun thing, while looking up One to try and get a gauge on who he is, which, by the way, he's down as a manga artist on Wikipedia, but I would say that he's far more an author, as the One Punch Man manga is drawn by Yusuke Murata. Seriously, he's either a famous webcomic artist or a manga writer. Oh right, sorry, the point, apparently he's working with J.J. Abrams on a project to come out later this month. Anyways, the reason that this may be cheating is that the first chapter of the manga and the first chapter of the webcomic are basically the same thing, with very small differences. The key difference being the artwork and maybe one or two page/panel differences. For example, in the webcomic, we see Saitama find out that Vaccine Man is now on Earth because he saw it on the TV while just sitting and chilling, whereas he just kind of shows up out of nowhere in the manga. I could be misremembering, I'll admit that. Anyways, the basic plot to both first chapters is that Vaccine Man shows up to kill all humans because they're a virus to the Earth, but Saitama, the titular One Punch Man, comes in and wins with a single punch. And that's really how the series itself lays out plot-wise. The point of this series isn't like a traditional superhero motif, like merely saving the day or even fighting the bad guy. And Chapter 1 sums it all up with Saitama being pissed that yet another villain has perished with merely one punch. He's actually having an existential crisis because of this. And I should honestly harp on that because really it's an interesting premise that could carry the series, and sort of has. But if you talk to anyone online, it's literally just a stupid, oh, he totally beat anyone, lols, and so awesome cause he's unstoppable. But hey, that's what I get when the only way I found out about new anime was from Jezu Otaku. God, he hasn't had a show in forever now, has he? Jeez. But anyways, I was actually worried about checking this out because of all the buzz surrounding the anime, and a lot of the fans just pushing that he was super strong and so much awesome. Anyways, I'd totally check out the webcomic if I were you. It's a neat thing that can actually be funny at times. I mean, literally the first chapter is Vaccine Man, the big evil of this chapter, making a 14-page spiel about his origin and hate for humans, and then after winning, Saitama, who has like 2 lines in it, ends up with just screaming, fuck! But at the same time, his interactions with other heroes of City Z, I don't know, Japan loves their lettered cities of the futures, really does continue pushing a great narrative. Now, I can't say anything about the anime other than it's super popular, and the animation itself looks fairly good from what I've seen. So, if you're an anime person, the OPM anime might be right up your alley to get into this character. Or, if you prefer the manga or the webcomic, hell, check out the webcomic itself. It is free. The original webcomic is linked below. So if you can read Japanese or just want to look at how silly the art is, then be my guest. But that's all for today.